All right, Brian. So before we kind of turn the page and lay the 2024 season to rest here, we're going to talk a little bit about, what the season was, big picture view for Notre Dame. And there was a lot of narrative crushing things that happened for Notre Dame this season in a positive light, right? Notre Dame did some things this season that no other Notre Dame program had done. They had 14 wins this season. They got, yeah, they didn't have a New Year's Six bowl win in 31 years. They got two in a week. And so you go back through and you look on this season and what it meant for the program. And Brian, there's a lot of good. There's a lot of good.
Yeah, I mean, it's just you look back on the year and it can be a challenge because you're still kind of I'll just speak for myself. I'm still a little bit raw from the game, and especially when I did that breakdown yesterday, Trev, because you're just like, oh my gosh, there were so many missed opportunities and so many chances for you to stay in that. I mean, again, would it have been enough to win? Who knows? But you sure would have liked to see them play their best and lose as opposed to leaving those things out there. So, the way a season ends is kind of like that is what sticks with you a little bit when looking at the season. And so what we're trying to do is kind of take a step back from the most recent game and look at the entire thing. And that's what we'll try to do. And when you look at from the entire thing, you're like, boy, what a year this was, Trevor. And they had to earn it. That's the crazy thing is like they had to earn it. And you look at what the expectations were at the beginning of the year, and then what they were on September 1st, the day after the A&M win, and they're sky high. They're at an all-time high. And then what they were less than a week later or a week later when we were sitting here on Sunday morning, waking up on Sunday morning, like, did that just happen? Like, I don't know if you felt that way, but I woke up on Sunday morning like, did I dream that? Because I've had dreams in the past, Trevor, where I'm covering Notre Dame getting beat by somebody terrible. Like, I don't know. It's like, you know what I mean? It's like worst case scenario.
Yeah.
I've had weird dreams. I've had some weird football dreams in my career. Like I'm showing up at a game that I'm playing and I don't have my cleats or I left my pads at home or, you know what I mean? It's like I have all these weird dreams about bad things happening in football, which is kind of sad. But I woke up, I'm like, did I dream that? Or did they seriously lose in Northern Illinois? Like I literally had to ask myself that for a second. And then you fast forward to kind of where they are 3 months later. And it's been such an amazing up and down ride. And you look back and you realize, like, man, this was kind of what we expected them to potentially be at the end. But the journey to get there was so much different than I would have planned it early in the season. And that's what kind of made it fun. But as you said, Trev, 14 wins is a new record. Now, again, you're going to have a lot of records shattered because of the extended playoff, you played 16 games. The most they'd ever played before was 13. So, of course, when you play more games than you've ever before by 3, you're going to have some of those records broken. But the 14 wins is huge. Not able to, 0 wins ever against Georgia. They were literally 0-3 against Georgia. You beat them and beat them in New Orleans where they used to play the SEC championship, which was big. You talk about, you haven't played Penn State in almost 20 years. There's a 9-1 all-time rival. You beat them in the Orange Bowl. So in the course of a week, a program that hadn't won a major bowl game since the end of the 1993 season won 2 of them in the course of a week. Just so many awesome things that kind of happened this season, Trevor. You have new stars breaking out. It was a ton of fun to cover this team. And I think the question then becomes like, all right, cool. It's good that it was fun, but what does it all mean? Like, that's kind of the next question is, what does it all mean? And so what did we learn about this program? And I think that's something to learn too. And one of the things I think when I look at it, Trevor, I think we learned about this program is that Notre Dame doesn't need the proverbial lucky break season to go their way. And we've heard a lot of people say that. I was on a pregame show with this lady who was an Ohio State fan, and again, she did a really nice job. She didn't think Notre Dame could score more than 7 points against Ohio State, which they obviously did more than that. But like, it was just interesting. It's like, Notre Dame's been able to find ways to win. And we've seen other people talk about this, the ridiculous Dennis Dodd question of Riley Leonard about, you've called all the breaks. And we've heard this narrative before, because I think a lot of media people just lazily put in past Notre Dame teams into to fit the narrative of this team. And it's super, super lazy. And I think that's kind of what people did. And to me, when you do that, you also kind of cheapen what Ohio State did by beating this team. But what we truly learned, if you're someone who actually paid attention to this team, is that this was far from everything's breaking the right way. Far from breaking the right way for Notre Dame. I mean, they had, I counted something like 13 to 15 regulars that missed games this year. It was ridiculous. Yeah, over and I think it's like closer to 11 linemen that were in the 2 deep that played, missed multiple games this year. I think 7 on the defensive line. It was not a lot of things went your way at times. You lose your All-American cornerback in Game 6. You lose to a MAC team in week 2. Your starting quarterback is never quite what you thought he'd be from a style of play standpoint. So you got to find other ways to win, and then he shows you great heart and grit and all that kind of stuff. And then your All-American running back gets hurt, or your all-star running back gets hurt in the last game of the year while he's dominating your rival, and he's never quite the same in the postseason. It's like there was a lot of things that went against Notre Dame, and they still got to this stage and earned the right to get to the stage by beating 3 teams. And I think that what the biggest thing is, what this season did is by destroying a lot of those narratives, you now have removed a lot of the final stumbling blocks between this program and it getting to its ultimate goal. That's a big thing to me.
To me, when I look at this season as a whole and the journey that they went on to get here, to me, I think my biggest takeaway of what it means is I think now this team finally has an identity. Because you go into this season, you have your 3rd offensive coordinator in 3 years. You have your 3rd different starting quarterback in 3 years. And you go through and it's just kind of one of those things where it's like, man, like what is this team about? Right? In 22, you watched them beat number 4 Clemson at home. You also watched them lose to Stanford at home. In 2023, they go out and they start out, 4-0, 5-0, I believe 4-0 to start the season. And no team looked like they can touch them. The second that they played a team that had a quality defense and was a quality football team, that 40 points per game slowly started turning into 17, started turning into 20. And then you host undefeated on number 10 ranked USC at home. You decimate them 48-20. And so a lot of my questions going into this season is, what is this team about? What is this program's identity? And I think we learned that this season. They're resilient. Take talent aside, because obviously you and I are 2 people that are under the firm belief that this team has the talent. This season was not this historic Cinderella story, once in a lifetime thing for Notre Dame. It wasn't. I mean, there were things that happened this season that teams that are on a Cinderella story run, the injuries that Notre Dame had to endure this season, that would have been the clock striking midnight on a Cinderella story team. Right.
Riley Mills going down in the opener, and Jeremiah Love being banged up, and Howard Cross was 60% maybe. Rocco Spindler gets hurt in the first playoff game. I mean, to your point, those are all things where clock strikes midnight and the chariot turns back into a pumpkin, and Cinderella turns back into 100% correct.
And you go back through and you look, and I think that's what this team lacked, was a program identity. Is what is Notre Dame football about? Because obviously the goal is to recruit top tier talent every single year to put yourself in contention. But we see it with teams that have immense talent, that have talent spread throughout across the board, but they don't have like an identity. They don't have something that's, a common theme or a common goal throughout the team. And those teams end up 9-3, 10-2. You know what I mean? Like Ole Miss was loaded with talent this year. right?
You talk about trying to buy a championship. Everybody kept accusing Ohio State of that. Ole Miss did that way more than Ohio State did.
Mm-hmm.
Way more than Ohio State did.
Mm-hmm. So you go through and you look at teams like that, and to me, that like you needed an identity to build off of for this year. That's what this season means to me, because you go through and you look at the roster, and that's one of the reasons why I feel differently. I've had a lot of time to reflect off of the national championship game, and I've said it that I feel more confident in this program where they're at now than I did. I feel better about this team than I did in 2012. Moving forward, I feel better about this team after moving forward from 2018 and from 2020, because I think it's not only are you elevating certain areas in talent, I think now this team has a full-blown identity. So that's what leaves me positive.
And I think I like the fact that I believe you're using identity correctly, Trevor, in that identity is not, well, hey, we're a cover one team on defense that likes to pressure, and we are a zone 11 personnel driven team on offense. That's not identity. That's your scheme. Your scheme can change and you can still have an identity. And Nick Saban did not run the same offense his last 2 titles that he won his first 2 titles at Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
Their offensive identity changed. We're talking about the overall team identity, which is about, consistency and toughness and overcoming an adversity and having a head coach that through his own trial and error, right, through his own mistakes early on, learned some valuable lessons that have made him be able to kind of tap into the potential that was always there. The potential was always there for Marcus Freeman to be a great coach, but he had to learn some things along the way. Maybe he should do that with his defensive coordinator hire. I'm just saying. But, like one of the things that I was told about Marcus Freeman's first year at Notre Dame is that like the sayings he has, they would change every week. And there'd be some like new motto for the week. And it was hard to kind of create consistency. And then late in the year, he just kind of was like, F it, this is what we need to be about. And I think he learned from that. And then the last 2 years, we've seen some consistency within those things where it's like, this is the standard. This is what we preach every single day, right? So if you're going to preach the whole one play, one life thing, you can't do that in week 1. And then you've got a different motto in week 2 and a different motto in week 3. There are certain premises that have to be true every single day, every single month, every single season. This is who we are. And those are the things that have become the identity of this program. And those things allowed them to have the mental focus to overcome all the things that happened. And that's the culture that Marcus Freeman established at Notre Dame. And the buy-in that I've got your back, you've got to have my back with the players. I mean, I was talking to somebody today who was relatively unhappy about something that was going on. But then immediately when the conversation shifts to Marcus Freeman, it's, I love Marcus Freeman. I think the kids love him. He's doing this, he's doing that. And those things are all great. And that's a big part of what was established this year. Yes, he's not perfect. There's still a lot more growth that he's going to have to make here as a head coach. And establishing some of those, okay, what are the lessons we learn that need to of things? Because there's 2 lessons that you learn. One is, right, that worked. We got to keep that going in some way, somehow. That's got to continue. And then what are some things that we wish we would have maybe done differently or impacted? And why won't a Northern Illinois game happen again? Because you learn the lessons from that loss and you implement them in ways that you don't have to deal with that anymore. And that's what he's done a pretty good job with. And that's allowed him to build the culture and identity of the program. You're using identity. I use the word culture. We're saying the same thing. This is the heartbeat of what your program is about. And then that's a big thing that had to be established. And, Nick Saban's title teams all had a different look to them, but there was consistency in approach. It was the process. It wasn't about their X's and O's and their scheme. It was about the process. And that's, that's something that I believe that Marcus Freeman has learned, and that played a big role in this team's success. But let's not get it twisted. You know what else also helps with all of that? There's coaches of 4 and 8 teams that are great at building culture. Tom Allen, I think, was very good at building a culture at Indiana. I mean, players loved him. They respected the heck out of him. They wanted to play for him. But he also didn't recruit the talent that you needed to win, right? I mean, let's be honest about that.
Right.
There's
Right.
coaches of mediocre programs whose players love them to death and they play their butts off. We've talked about this with Tony Elliott. I mean, Tony Elliott's players play their butts off for him at Virginia. Doesn't mean he's a great coach. And a big part of that is they also don't have the players. And what Marcus Freeman has also shown at Notre Dame is you don't have to you can recruit depth and you can recruit impact talent everywhere at Notre Dame. That's the reality of it. I mean, you can't recruit quarterback at Notre Dame. Well, yeah, they can. You can't recruit, top level secondary guys. Yeah, you can. Well, you can't recruit this, can't recruit that. You're not going to have the depth to hang with those teams. Well, whose depth shined greater in the Sugar Bowl, Georgia's or Notre Dame's? It was Notre Dame's. And so are there areas where the talent's got to continue to get better? Absolutely. And we're going to talk a lot this offseason about some areas where the talent isn't quite good enough yet. But what you've seen is in a very short period of time, Trevor, the talent on this roster has taken a huge increase. And so what this season showed, and we talked about this before the season, this year is going to prove if Marcus Freeman and the staff are as good at evaluating talent as we think that they are and hope that they are. Because there's a lot of guys that maybe weren't highly ranked and they weren't ranked here and they weren't this, that we thought were really good players and that Notre Dame thought were really good players, but they weren't the traditional really good players. Leonard Moore, we thought, had a chance to eventually be a stud. Now, did I think he was going to do what he did this year? No, I didn't. But we loved his talent. I mean, go back and watch the commit video. Ryan and I are raving about Leonard Moore and the talent that he has and the potential that he has. And, it was there. I mean, a lot of the guys that were six. I mean, we loved Jeremiah Love's talent. We loved Jaden Greathouse's talent. We viewed him as a top 100 player. The recruiting services didn't, and so what you saw is that they are that team. They are good at evaluating talent. They can recognize this. They can say, "Hey, we're going to put big time players in the football field." Are they where they need to be at all positions? No, but they're greatly increased. And a perfect example is look at the last time Notre Dame got into the playoff where we thought they might have a shot to win a game or two. It was 2018, not 2020. We all knew it was going to take a miracle to beat Alabama. But you look at 2018. I thought that team starting lineup had a chance to go toe-to-toe with anybody. They were going to have to play really, really well, but they had a shot. And for the first 25 minutes, 30 minutes of the 20 to 25 minutes of the Clemson game, that's exactly what it was. It was back and forth. It was two really, really good football teams going back at each other. Well, what changed is they lose Julian Love, and just like that, everything changed because they didn't have the depth at cornerback to overcome it because they had to put an injured guy in there to replace Julian Love because they didn't have anybody else. Dante Vaughn had to go in. Dante was not 100% healthy. They had to put him in there, and then, of course, he gets burned and things didn't work out because that's where you were as a team. Now you lose a guy like Benjamin Morrison, and you're putting Leonard Moore in the game. I mean, that's what this team has been able to do. And it's to show, like, it's not just one guy. If we lose that one stud, we're in trouble. We got dudes everywhere, and we've got depth of players. I mean, they play more guys on defense than just about anybody I evaluated this year. It's crazy how many different guys they play. And there's no drop-off. And that's the big thing there, too, is they show that you can recruit as well as anybody. Now, in this new era of payrolls and things like that, we're going to have to learn if Notre Dame can keep this roster together. I'm hoping that they can, but we don't know. We don't know how this is going to affect anybody. This isn't I'm raising concerns about Notre Dame. I'm raising concerns about I don't know how any of these teams are going to do this. I have no clue how it's going to work. We're in uncharted territory in a lot of different ways. But as long as they can manage that well, what they've shown is, hey, we can recruit at a high level. Now they have to recognize where they're short right now and then go make those changes. And so that's where I'm excited about it. When I look at this team, Trevor, is they prove that they can put big time talent on the field. They out-talented Georgia. Well, we had our backup quarterback. You're Georgia. Your backup quarterback's supposed to be a pretty good player, and he was, and he played well. You got beat because your offensive line with a bunch of highly ranked players got whooped by Notre Dame's defensive line because your receivers outside of 2 plays couldn't do a whole lot because your offense couldn't do a thing against the Notre Dame defense. and because Notre Dame had every bit as good of athletes as you did, which is why they're the ones that made just as many. I mean, I'll see your 66-yard gain and I'll raise you a 98-yard kick return for a score. So those are all things that you look at and you start thinking about this 2024 team, and a lot that it goes into that narrative about talent. Notre Dame can't have top talent. And I think that narrative was absolutely destroyed this year. And that's a big takeaway from the season is a lot of those stumbling blocks that people thought that Notre Dame had, a lot of them that were self-imposed by past Notre Dame coaches. Marcus Freeman and his staff and this program basically just took sledgehammers to all those roadblocks, destroyed them, and got them out of the way. And now it's like, okay, no more excuses. Now go get it done. Go do what you need to do to take those final steps as a program. That's the key.
The thing that makes me the most excited about this team moving forward and what this 2024 season showed me is that there is a distribution of talent. It's not just a guy here or a guy there. The depth is fantastic, right? And it leaves a lot of room to be excited. And not only is the talent spread across the starters, it's spread across the 2 deep, the 3 deep, like we had to see this year due to injury at Notre Dame. And that's what makes me the most excited about this team, right? Because you go through and in the years where you had those like premier level guys, you had Jalen Smith in 2015. Starting next to him was Joe Schmidt. I love Joe Schmidt, right? He was a try-hard guy. He loved the program, loved Notre Dame. But now this year, you have an elevation of where that was, right? In years past, you would have a Kyle Hamilton, but like on the defensive side of the ball, like that was kind of it, give or take
and
2 or 3 guys. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. But then you've got a Drew White and a Justin Adamiola and a Clarence Lewis and guys like that started in the starting lineup as well.
Right. And so then you go through and you look at what this Notre Dame team is, and you have a Leonard Moore and a Christian Gray and a Xavier Watts and an Adon Schuler and a Drake Bowen. You look at the offensive side of the ball. In years past, it would be like, hey, we got Josh Adams, and it's like, yeah. And then, outside skilled positions, there were some question marks and different things like that. And there are still question marks at the receiver position, right? That's something that's going to be an ongoing conversation throughout the offseason. But the position that they're in is they're going to thrive. But now you have it to where you just go look at what Jaden Greathouse's performances were in the Orange Bowl and the national championship game, right? The narrative about Notre Dame's offense before was always, they can throw for 250 yards against, Stanford. Yeah, sure, they can go air it out against Navy, where Navy's a good football program this year, but we said it before the game. There's a clear athletic advantage for Notre Dame, and so that narrative is different. The one thing that I do find that's interesting that I wanted to touch on as well, I think Notre Dame, like nationally, is getting a little bit more recognition despite losing in the national championship. You're always going to have those guys that talk about, of course, we knew Notre Dame couldn't do it, and yada, yada, yada. You guys are Notre Dame fans. You understand what that sounds like. But the biggest difference for me this year is what Notre Dame was able to do through the air in the second half of that football game, what Jaden Greathouse was able to do, and some of the throws that Riley Leonard made in the second half of that game started turning the narrative for some people, and the light switch finally turned on to them of like, hey, maybe Notre Dame does have those top premier high-end athletes. I mean, I saw videos of Quinshon Judkins' 70-yard run, but a lot of that was because Leonard Moore hawked him. Like the evaluation of that video wasn't the great run by Quinshon. It was how fast Leonard Moore was to catch up and run him down. And not far behind him was Christian Gray. So I think if Notre Dame made a comeback in that game and they made it 31-23, but it's because, J.D. Price ripped off a long run or Jeremiah Love ripped off a long run, they'd be like, yep, same old Notre Dame. You're running the football like this isn't sustainable. But the way that they climbed back into that game through the air, Mitchell Evans making some catches, and Jaden Greathouse absolutely cooking Caleb Downs on that spin move, and making that one-handed slot fade touchdown grab over Jordan Hancock, who played good coverage on him. I think that turned the light switch on for some people to say, hey, this Notre Dame team is actually pretty athletic. And the players that were making some of those plays, it's not like there was a senior that was getting ready to go to the draft. It was, oh, that guy's a sophomore. Oh, that guy's a true freshman. So that's what makes it exciting.
What was even funnier is there were multiple plays where Jaden Greathouse beat Hancock much better than he did on the touchdown.
I know.
Like people say Mike Denbrock wasn't aggressive, and my head thing is look at the first play of the second drive. He's trying to take a shot. Riley Leonard just didn't make the throw. He smoked Jordan Hancock off the line on that play, and I have that in the film breakdown I did on the message board. If you are a premium member, go look at that. Because I mean, he smacked him. I mean, he beat him off the line. That was the same ball he should have thrown that he threw on that same field against Georgia Tech. If he throws that at Jaden Greathouse, Notre Dame's got it first down inside Ohio State territory with the game 7-7, and they're cruising again to retake the lead. I mean, that drive could have completely changed the outlook of the game. In that maybe they still lose, but it would have been a back and forth game at that point in time. Defense would have had more time to kind of spend on the sideline, going over stuff and making adjustments, things like that. But I mean, he torched Jordan Hancock, who's a good football player, by the way.
Yeah.
But yeah, to your point though, I mean, you look at it and say that are there places where Ohio State has more talent than Notre Dame? Yeah. And it's okay to admit that. I mean, if Notre Dame had the God-given talent of some of those Ohio State defensive linemen, but my answer is, well, I kind of think they do though. Right? Like now, I don't know if Riley Mills, Boubacar Traore, and Jordan Patel playing that game, what is Jason Onye? What does this game look like? Right? I mean, so taking away Traore and Jordan Patel and Riley Mills means imagine Ohio State doesn't have Tyleek Williams, they don't have Jack Sawyer, and then whoever their top reserve on the defensive end is. Like. Take that away, and what does that first drive look like? I mean, Notre Dame went right down the field on Ohio State early with all those guys playing. And then Ohio State also then has to play that game without Denzel Burke, their equivalent of Benjamin Morrison. And so that's the point is the talent's got to get better at certain spots because there were certain spots when you lost a guy and you weren't as good there when you lost the guy. The problem for Notre Dame is they didn't just lose a guy. They lost both of their top two Vipers.
Right.
Not a lot of teams are going to lose their top two edge rushers by game 5 and still play 11 more games. Right? Like people keep saying like they don't have the talent on D-line. I'm like, you guys do realize 3 of their 4 best defensive linemen didn't play in that game. So now that's another question you got to figure out is the injuries, and we'll talk about that later. But that's the thing, though, Trevor. Is this season told us they're not there yet, but holy crap, they're really close. Sorry for being crude, but I'm just trying to make a point. It's kind of for effect. Is this team talent-wise, culture-wise, resources-wise, is a lot further along than maybe even we realized coming into the season? Because honestly, I look back at my predictions and I had fun. I remember we did our playoff predictions. And I said, look, I'm picking Notre Dame to win it all. That's my fun pick. I don't know, what my expectation is. You got to win one. You got to get in and win one. That's the minimum expectation. And then depending who you play, you play two. If I'd have told you all before the season, Notre Dame is going to have all the injuries they have. They're going to lose Northern Illinois. But don't worry, they're going to get to play Georgia in the second round. You'd be like, you know what? That's a great win in the season. And I'm just happy you got there. I'm happy to get there. And hopefully Georgia doesn't beat them too bad. And I said, look, the score is going to be 23-10. You would have all thought Notre Dame would have been the team with 10. I mean, I would have. I'm saying y'all. I would have felt the same way. They're going to lose Riley Mills. They're going to lose Boubacar. They're going to lose Jordan Patel. They're going to lose Benjamin Morrison. They're going to lose Ashton Craig. They're going to lose Charles Jagasol. They're going to lose Cooper Flanagan. Riley Leonard's going to not figure out how to throw football effectively until like the middle of the season. Jeremiah Love's not going to be 100% because he's going to get hurt in the last game of the regular season. And they're going to play Georgia in the Sugar Bowl in round 2. And the final score is going to be 23-10. If I'd have told you that before the season, raise your hand if you'd have thought Notre Dame is going to be the team that's going to have more, the winner of that game. Not a lot of people probably would have raised their hand if they're being honest about it. And that's what this team did. It's exactly what this team did. And it's because of the the depth of talent. It's because of the culture. It's because when certain guys goes down, it's not just his replacement that has to step up. The mindset of this team is like, okay, so-and-so's down now. I got to raise the level of my play also, but you don't play that position. Yeah, but I got to make sure I'm better so we don't have to ask this guy to do what he did. And so I just think those are all the things that got established with this team. And what this season showed, this was not any kind of lucky run. This was not any kind. This is, to me, as long as Marcus Freeman keeps doing what he's doing, this is the beginning of a new era of Notre Dame football, is what this season showed us to be. This is not a one-off where you have the 2012 season, you lose all those players the next year in the Pinstripe Bowl. I don't believe that's what this is. 2018, you have your playoff run, you lose a bunch of guys, your culture's not the same the next year. You're in the, what bowl they playing against? Was it the Camping World? No, it wasn't the Camping. Yeah, it was Camping World Bowl against Iowa State, right? Isn't that the bowl they played in 2019?
Yep.
Where you're playing a 7-win football team, because you only played 2 good teams all year and they both, smacked you. Like that. That's what I don't believe that's what this is. 2015, they have that great year in 2015. You lose a bunch of guys, you're 4-8 the next year. I don't think that's what this is. I think what this is this is the beginning, because of all the things that we talked about that are realities of this football team. As long as the hunger stays there, as long as the focus stays there, as long as Marcus Freeman keeps doing what he's been doing, then this is just the beginning. And that's what's exciting as a Notre Dame fan about where this is going, is this is just the beginning. They're going to lose guys this offseason, guys that we're hoping that they don't lose. That's life. Everybody else loses them too. But you have to hope that there's a plan in place to keep this thing rocking and rolling as you move forward.
It's definitely not the team of destiny like what some people make it out to be. And it's, you look at teams like, Ohio State, they had 25 seniors on that team, right? Like, you want to talk about, I'm not making the claim that Ohio State's about to fall off. That's not my takeaway, right? But you go through, and if there's going to be a narrative of a team of destiny, it's when a group of guys, all those stories came out about, Jack Sawyer kind of rallying all the seniors around to say, hey, like, we got to come back for what was the saying? Right. I'm sure Archer knows, like one year for one life or something. It was like that was their motto. And like, if there's going to be a conversation around a team of destiny, it's something like that. Like, it's a team of destiny is like a 2019 LSU. We might not never see an offense like that ever again in college football with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, that to me, Notre Dame has set up really good building blocks, and there are some areas that they need to fill in, which we're getting ready to talk about here. But with that being said, with the areas that they need to fill in, with being able to stay healthier, they made it to the national championship.
Right.
And they're a 3rd and 11 stop away from potentially driving down and tying it to force an overtime game. Who knows how the rest of that plays out, right? Brian, you put that video breakdown on the board of 7 to 8 missed opportunities that Notre Dame could have had to make it a ball game even earlier than late in the fourth quarter.
And I could have gone with more. There's more plays that I could have broken down in there. But like, that's the thing, is like, you're trying to get into that sphere where Ohio State is, where Ohio State's going to lose. I forget who it was. I think it was Jordan Reed. It was Jordan Reed from ESPN. I think it was him. I could be wrong. But he said, like, the last 5 years, the team with the most players picked in the NFL draft was the team that won the national championship. And that's probably going to continue again this year with Ohio State. Mm-hmm. When you think of all the guys that they're going to lose, and a lot of guys are going to get drafted. But their thing is going to be like, all right, so let's reload and go back at it. And that's where Notre Dame is getting to. It's like, man, it sucks that they're losing this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy. But it's like, all right, cool, reload. Mm-hmm. Right? Reload. And you really reload with what you already have on your roster. Right, developing younger players. You reload by going to the portal.
Right.
You reload by bringing in big-time high school talent, and that's what Notre Dame is doing. And that's the exciting thing, is because you do feel like they're in a reload mode, right? Just like Ohio State will be in a reload mode. Oh crap! What are you going to do without Will Howard? Put in Julian Sayin and hope that he's the next guy. That's what Notre Dame's going to be doing with CJ Carr, right? Oh, you're going to lose, Travion and Quinshon Judkins probably. Okay, what are you going to do? Okay, James Peoples going to be a dude. You got a really good freshman coming in. You go to the portal and get a top running back, just like you did with Quinshon. That's, you lose a Mecca. Well, what are you going to do? Put in Brandon Ennis, and let him ball out, and that's what the best teams do, is they go get the top players, and when guys leave, that next in line guy is ready to step up. And that's what Ohio State's going to do next year, and that's what Notre Dame's going to do next year. And I'm looking forward to to watching that climb. But that's what's different about this is this whole thing about this is a lucky run and it was a magical year.
Yeah.
There's no doubt it was a magical year, but it was an earned season as well, a very hard earned season as well. And it's going to be exciting to see how this thing continues. But that's what I'm excited about. And we're going to start talking about some 25 stuff here coming up. But this to me, I believe, Trevor, the way that this season went down, it's almost better that it wasn't the magical season as far as catching all the breaks.
Yeah.
Because, you know, this is a lot of years where you got a lot of scars from this season, you know, and you learn they're going to heal, but you learn from those scars, right? I mean, it's like, okay, like you got cut there, got cut there, got cut there. Those things heal, and here's what we're going to learn from it, and we're going to build on this, and we're going to become stronger to make sure that we don't put ourselves in that situation again. But what you also learn from it is that you can take that punishment. You can take those blows. You can take those, you know, shots or whatever the case may be and still keep fighting and still go through, right? You know, you're a boxer. You're bloodied. You're battered. You got cut over your right eye. You know, you got your nose busted. You sprained your wrist hitting a guy in the ribs. You're bloodied and battered, but you know what? I'm coming back out fighting. And you got to earn that win and knock a guy out in the 12th round. You know, you had to earn that win. It wasn't easy. You go out there and play some bum. You know, you weren't fighting Glass Joe. You know what I'm saying? Like you were in the later rounds. You know what I mean? You're going against Mike Tyson and Sandman and, you know, all those kind of guys, right? So I just dated myself big time with the Mike Tyson punch out reference there. But that's the thing we learned is this team doesn't need everything to break their way to be one of the best teams in college football. Now, next year is going to be about proving that what we are saying is accurate, that it is sustainable. But I believe what we saw this season and how they got there, that this is the beginning of Notre Dame being a team that every year, like, okay, how far is Notre Dame going to go? How deep can Notre Dame go this year? Where they're the team like Texas, like, well, how did I get being ranked? I still don't understand why everybody's just assuming Texas is going to be a top 2 to 3 team next year with all they're losing. It's because of Arch. I'm like, okay, well, you know, whatever. But I want Notre Dame to be in that position. And I think they're starting to get that reputation. Now you've got to go show next year that it's warranted. And that's what I'm excited about.
Well, look, guys, that's going to do it for our kind of look back on the 2024 season. And it's time to start turning the page over to 2025 and talk about what that means and what this team and what this program needs to do to address it and to close that gap, because they're getting close, like what we've talked about. But listen, guys, before we get there, make sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and share this podcast with your friends and family. Anybody that you know loves Notre Dame and college football as much as you guys do. And as always, the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com.